The question of whether or not witches exist is a fascinating one. After all, if they did exist, then surely we'd have evidence to prove it, right? Well, perhaps surprisingly, we do have proof that witches existed. In fact, we have proof that people were accused of being witches, and not just any people, but people from all walks of life, including very young children, respected religious leaders, and even entire communities of people who just didn't conform to the expectations of their society. It would be easy to dismiss these accusations of witchcraft as the delusional ravings of paranoid bigots. But that might not be the full story. Could there have been another explanation for these supposed witches? With that said, here are some really messed up things that actually happened during the witch hunt era. Number 10, the Pendle Witches. In 1612, a group of beggars visited a family in Lancashire, England. The family took them in and gave them food and shelter, but after the beggars left, strange things started happening around the house. First, livestock began dying, and then the family members fell ill. When they died, the local minister, a man named Thomas Potts, blamed the deaths on witchcraft. He claimed that the family had been cursed by the beggars and set about finding them. Eventually, he found the beggars, and with the help of several others, dragged the beggars back to the home where the family had found them and began to interrogate them. One of the beggars confessed to being a witch and even pointed the finger at a former servant of the family who had recently died. Then the first beggar accused another woman of being a witch, and suddenly the net was cast wider. Pretty soon, several women were arrested for practicing witchcraft and put on trial for the crimes. At the trial, one of the women fell over dramatically when she heard the evidence against her, and this was taken as a sign that she was guilty. All of the women were found guilty and sentenced to death by hanging. They became known as the Pendle Witches. But many people believe that what really happened here was that these women were targeted because they were outsiders, not because they were practicing witchcraft. The story of the Pendle Witches is one of the most well-known in England, but it is by no means the only one. Number 9. The Hertfordshire Witch Trials. Between 1644 and 1646, over 200 people were accused of witchcraft in Hertfordshire, England. The reason for this sudden increase in accusations was the civil war between the Royalists and Parliamentarians. When the Parliamentarian army occupied St. Albans, Hertfordshire, they began searching for supplies and people to help them fight. Many people refused, however, and so the army began arresting people on suspicion of witchcraft, believing that these people were using magic to resist their efforts. Over 200 people were arrested and many were put on trial. However, few of them were executed. This was because by the time the trials were taking place, the Civil War was almost over, and the new government had made it illegal to accuse someone of witchcraft without having any hard evidence. 8. The Salem Witch Trials. Probably the most famous witch trials of all time were those that took place in Salem, Massachusetts in 1692. A group of young girls began acting strangely and claimed that they had been cursed by a group of older women in the community. Soon, more and more people came forward with similar claims, and before long, 200 people had been accused of witchcraft. 19 of them were executed, but most of them only because they refused to confess to a crime they didn't commit. Nowadays, we know that these accusations were most likely the result of mass hysteria, but at the time, the fear of Satan and his followers ran rampant through New England, and there seemed to be a witch hunt every few years. And while the Salem witch trials may be the most famous, they were by no means the worst. Number 7. The North Berwick Witch Trials. Between 1590 and 1591, over 70 people were accused of attending the Devil's Sabbath in North Berwick, Scotland. The Sabbath is said to have been attended by witches from all over Scotland and northern England, and they were accused of performing disgusting rituals and making pacts with the devil. Agnes Sampson, one of the accused witches, testified that she had seen the devil in the form of a fat black cat. She also said that she had flown to the Sabbath on the back of a broomstick, which was a common motif in witch trials at the time. Sampson was executed, But many of the other accused witches escaped justice. Some fled the country and others simply disappeared. To this day, no one knows what really happened in North Berwick, but the witch trials show that people believed in witches and that they were willing to do whatever it took to protect themselves from them. 6. The Malleus Maleficarum. One of the most influential books on witchcraft ever written was the Malleus Maleficarum, or the Hammer of the Witches. Written by Heinrich Kramer in 1486, the book was used as a guide to identify and punish witches throughout Europe for centuries. It detailed everything from how to identify a witch to how to extract a confession from one. It also contained instructions on how to perform the ritual that would eventually become known as the Devil's Sabbath. The book was so popular that it went through several editions, and its influence on the witch trials can still be seen today. Number 5. The Loudun Possessions. In 1634, a group of nuns in Loudun, France began acting strangely. They claimed that they had been possessed by demons, and the local priest, Father Barra, was called in to perform an exorcism. While performing the exorcism, Barre claimed that he heard the voices of the nuns' supposed tormentors, and this led to the arrest of 4 men, including the prior of the convent. All 4 men were convicted of witchcraft, and 2 of them were burned at the stake. But many people believe that the real story behind the Loudun possessions was one of mental illness rather than demonic possession. 4. The Poisoner's Cup. During the Middle Ages, there was a belief that witches could poison people with a special cup. The cup was said to be able to hold any liquid and transfer its contents into another vessel without spilling a drop. This made it the perfect tool for a witch to poison someone without anyone knowing. Of course, this belief was never true, but it led to many innocent people being accused of witchcraft and killed as a result. Even worse, there were even accusations that the chalice used in communion was actually the poisoner's cup. For those accused, there was no escape. If they confessed to the crime, they were seen as traitors to the church and were punished severely. If they denied the accusations, they were often tortured until they admitted to the crime. Number 3. The Burning Times. While most people think of the Salem witch trials when they hear the term witch hunt, the truth is that the Salem trials were actually one of the last major witch hunts to take place in the United States. In fact, the last person to be executed for witchcraft in America was Giles Corey in 1692. But witch hunts continued in other parts of the world for decades after that. In Europe, thousands of people were accused of witchcraft and put to death, mostly by burning. The last person to be burned at the stake for witchcraft was Margaret Robbe, who was executed in 1775. 2. The Werewolf of Bedburg. One of the most bizarre cases of supposed witchcraft came in 1589 when a German man named Peter Stubbe came under suspicion of being a werewolf. According to legend, Stubbe had been seen howling at the moon and had even been tracked back to his own village by bloodhounds. Witnesses described seeing him transform into a wolf and claimed that he had confessed to killing several villagers as well as a child. Stubbe was arrested and brought to court where he pleaded not guilty to all charges, but despite this, he was found guilty and sentenced to death. He was stripped naked and tied to a stake where he was whipped until he confessed to his crimes. Afterwards, he was burned at the stake. While there is no evidence that werewolves exist, it is possible that what really happened here was that Stubbe was suffering from a rare medical condition called hypertrichosis, which causes excessive hair growth over the body. This could explain the wild appearance and animalistic behavior that the witnesses described. 1. The Witch of Edmonton. One of the most unusual accusations of witchcraft ever made came in 1616 when a 22-year-old woman from Edmonton, England, was accused of flying through the air using a pair of wings made out of linen cloth. Witnesses claimed to have seen the woman flying around the city, and she was soon arrested and put on trial for witchcraft. But this wasn't the first time she'd been accused of such a thing. In fact, She'd been accused of flying several times before and had even been forced to stand trial for it. But each time she was found not guilty. That was until 1616, when a group of men finally caught up with her as she was flying through the air and brought her down to earth. She was finally convicted and sentenced to death. The woman was executed, but many people believe that she was innocent, and that what really happened was that she was simply a victim of circumstance. Perhaps she was an innocent woman who was in the wrong place at the wrong time and was targeted by a group of men looking for someone to blame for their problems. Or maybe she was a victim of mass hysteria and the men simply believed that she was a witch because they wanted to believe it. Whatever the truth may be, the case of the Witch of Edmonton remains one of the most bizarre accusations of witchcraft ever made. Thanks for watching. Do you think there really were witches during the witch hunt era? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. See you next time. Bye.